If you've been along on our journey with Surat Yusuf, thank you. This week is a bonus episode where I share what inspired starting this podcast in the first place, and it's also a summary of the main lessons. It is both a bookend and a prequel, and I hope you enjoy it. Next week, we're starting our next surah, another epic story, this time of Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam. Surat Taha, a story of courage, liberation, and the power of letting go. This is Quran Conversations, the podcast for anyone who wishes to unlock the meaning and healing power of the Quran. I'm your host, Dalia Mogahed, an author, researcher, and a student of the Quran. And I'll be in conversation with one of my dearest teachers, Imam Muhammad Majid, a scholar of the Quran and longtime family counselor and congregational leader. If you're enjoying this podcast, please review it on your podcasting platform. It helps more than you know. Quran Conversations is sponsored by Fawakih, an online learning platform for Quranic Arabic, which I myself use. Start your journey in unlocking the language of the Quran. Go to fawakih.org. We hope this podcast encourages your own reflective journey with the Quran. Make sure to stay until the end to hear this week's reflection prompt. For more spiritual insights, follow me on Instagram at Dalia Mogahed. Without further ado, let's dive into this week's episode. Assalamu alaikum. بسم الله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. I am so happy to be here. We are just a couple of weeks away from Ramadan, and I get to participate in such a blessed occasion of helping to be a part of raising money for a masjid. And then it even got better when I learned that part of the reason that I was chosen as a speaker for this very important event is because of the organizers had heard my podcast. I host a podcast with my sheikh, my Quran teacher, called Quran Conversations. And this podcast grew out of my own need to heal after a period of 13 months when I lost my father and my best friend. It was a very, very difficult year for me. And so I was studying Surat Yusuf to get through it, almost as my own grief therapy. And so I asked my teacher if I could meet with him once a week to discuss the surah as I was memorizing it and reading different tafsir and sort of reflecting on the surah. And he was very generous and agreed. And then I thought, well, maybe these conversations might be of interest to somebody else. Maybe I'll record them. And then it grew out of that, and I thought, well, maybe we could even do a podcast. And so that's actually how Quran Conversations came to be. It was the outgrowth of my own endeavor and need to heal from a very difficult year, a very difficult time of my life. And the reason I chose Surat Yusuf for this journey is because it was what Allah prescribed to Rasulullah ﷺ when he underwent his own year of sorrow, where he lost his wife and he lost his uncle, who had been a support to him and basically a father figure to him. So he lost these two incredibly important people to him in the same year. And it was also the year where he was ridiculed and rejected at Ta'if. He told Aisha radiallahu anha later that it was the most difficult day of his whole life. And it was when his own relatives, his own family members, really turned up the volume on their abuse and assaults against him after he lost his political protection from his uncle. And so Surat Yusuf was sent as a balm for his heart. And in the same way, it acts as the same kind of healing for all of us. And so I was so excited when I got the topic for my talk as lessons from Surat Yusuf. It's like my favorite topic to talk about. So I wanted to start by maybe pointing out some of the interesting parallels between the story of Surat Yusuf when it was revealed and then the parallels in the life of Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam. Because when you look at these parallels, it can help you draw parallels in your own life. So the first thing is that Surat Yusuf talks about betrayal of those closest to you. And in this way, it helps Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam understand the betrayals that he was experiencing from his own family members. And what is really important about this point is that we know from psychology and really just common sense that we form our sense of self and our sense of value, our self respect and our self-esteem from how our family treats us, right? If your own family, your own tribe, your own people, the ones that are put in, whose responsibility it is to take care of you, to build you up, if they themselves are cutting you down and betraying you, it really impacts your self-value. And so you need some reframing of that through this surah, where Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam was, as if he was reminded that even the best of people have family members that betray them, that are against them. And in both cases, it was because of jealousy. In both cases, his family actually conspired to kill him, in both Surat Yusuf and in the life of Rasulullah ﷺ. Interestingly, this surah was revealed before the conspiracy actually came to fruition, where he had to migrate away from Mecca to Medina when members of the Meccan elite, which included his own family members, conspired to end his life, to assassinate him. So it's almost foreshadowing some of the hardships that he was about to face. They both had to leave their home. They both had to leave their land. In the case of Yusuf, alayhi salam, he was thrown in a well and then picked up by a caravan and sold into slavery. He started out in Palestine and he ended up in Egypt. So he had to leave his land. Same with Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam, who had to migrate out of Mecca to Medina to escape assassination. And both of them reunited with these same people that conspired against them, triumphant, in a place of authority, with the power to exact retribution. And in both cases, they chose mercy over revenge. And so it was, again, revealing this story to make Rasulullah's heart firm and hopeful, and to help him understand what was about to happen in his own life. And so this is really the overall, message that I want to convey, is the Quran is a message to all of you, to me, to you, and it is the best source of understanding for your own life. If only we can take the time to reflect on it, to unlock its meaning and its healing power, which is really the whole reason that I wanted to start this podcast, first for myself. And so what are some of the lessons that we can draw for our own lives from this beautiful story, from the best story, as it's called in the Quran, Surat Yusuf. Well, first, let me kind of give you an overview in case you're not familiar with every detail of the story, what exactly happens in this story, and then I'll sort of draw out some of the lessons. So the story begins, the story sort of opens with the child Yusuf alayhi salam sharing a dream with his father, Yaqub alayhi salam, where he sees the sun and the moon and 11 stars prostrating to him. And he is somewhat unsettled by this dream. He doesn't understand what it means, but he felt safe enough to share this dream with his father. And his father tells him, do not tell your brothers, because they might plot a plot against you. Certainly, Satan is to man an enemy. And then he goes on to teach his son who he is, to instill in him his identity as a believer in one God. So what happens next is his brothers are indeed jealous of him, do believe that he is sort of taking away their father's love from them. They have a they have an approach of this scarcity mentality, that if their father loves Yusuf, he doesn't love them. And they believe that if they get rid of Yusuf, alayhi salam, that their father's love will then, be showered on them instead. It's a delusion, but they convince themselves of this and decide to basically abduct him and get rid of him. And they convince their father to let him go with them to play and to have fun. And he expresses to them his fear that the wolf might eat him. And so it sort of like plants an idea in their mind. So they take Yusuf away, they throw him in a well, they leave him, and they come back and claim that, oh, you know what? The wolf ate him. And they show him a shirt that is stained with fake blood but is completely unharmed. So Yaqub alayhi salam knows immediately they're lying because the shirt is not torn in any way. How did the wolf eat him while keeping the shirt completely intact? And so he is taken by a caravan, sold into slavery, into the home of a minister in Egypt. And the minister says, take care of this boy, to his wife. Yusuf then grows up. He is beautiful. He is handsome. He's now a grown, young adult. And the woman of the house tries to seduce him, is sort of infatuated with him. He resists her and runs, and she tears his shirt from the back. She then claims that he was attacked. When she's found out, she then claims that he was the one approaching her. And he denies it, and then a witness from her own home says if his shirt is torn from the front, right? When you're attacking someone, they'll tear your shirt from the front. Then he is lying and she's truthful. But if it's torn from the back, then he is truthful and she is lying. And they find, of course, that his shirt is torn from the back. And so they knew full well he was honest. But when the women of the market, of the Medina, of the city, start to talk about it, they need to manage the crisis. What do powerful people do when they need to manage a crisis? They find a scapegoat. They need someone to take the hit for it. And that was Yusuf alayhi salam. So they put him in prison, falsely accused of a crime he did not commit. And they knew full well that they were doing that. In prison, he meets two men, and he speaks to them with kindness and really as equals. And he interprets their dream. One of them leaves prison, and Yusuf says to him, remember me with your Lord, meaning remember me with the man that you work for, so that he could help him get out of prison. The man completely forgets this and leaves, and then Yusuf alayhi salam stays in prison for many more years. Finally, one day, the king has a dream. The dream is this. The dream is that 7 skinny cows eat 7 fat cows. And they don't understand the dream. They don't know what it means. And then this man that used to be with him in prison remembers. Wait a minute. I know a guy who interprets dreams. I'm going to go ask him. Goes back to Yusuf, asks Yusuf, what does this dream mean? Now, Yusuf could have used the interpretation of the dream as leverage to leave prison. He could have said, I'll tell you if you get me out of here first. But he didn't. He just went ahead and told him what the dream meant. He said, you are going to have 7 years of normal harvest. And what you need to do for this is you need to store the harvest. Store some of it, because the next 7 years will be drought. And you're going to need what you stored for those 7 years of drought. And then there will be a year at the end where you will press oil. Basically what means you will press oil and grapes. And that it's symbolic of being a year of rain and plenty, a year of sweetness, a year of ease. So he goes back, this messenger goes back, and the king says, bring this man to me. And they go back to Yusuf alayhi salam, and they say, the king wants to see you. Of course, he should jump at the chance. I get to be the dream interpreter of the king. Yay. But what does he say? He's like, no, I'm not going anywhere. I need to leave this place with my reputation intact, on my own terms, with my dignity. So he says, go ask about the women who cut their hands, because the women of the city, when they saw his beauty, cut their hands. So they go back and they ask the women, and the women all, by this time, are ready to confess. He never did anything wrong. We only saw him as upright. And then even the wife of the minister does her full-throated confession, says she was the one in the wrong and that he was innocent. And only under those conditions does he agree to leave. And he comes out of prison and he faces the king with his full dignity, with his back straight, not with a scandal over his head. And then asks to be put in charge of the storehouses of all of Egypt, an incredibly important and powerful position of authority. And he was granted this position. And then during the year of drought, his brothers come back. And they don't know who he is, but he knows exactly who they are. And they ask for provision. Look at how far this drought went, from Egypt to Palestine. And they ask for food, and he gives it to them. And through different, circumstances, he's able to bring his brother Binyamin back to him, and then finally reunite with his whole family and forgives his brothers after they acknowledge their mistake. And so in that place of authority, all his family comes back and they all prostrate to him. And he says to his father, remember that dream? This is what it meant. This is how it was supposed, this was a vision, the vision I had as a child. This is the meaning of that vision. All of you are here, and he's in this place of authority in Egypt, and they are paying their respects to him. Okay, that's the story of Yusuf. Beautiful story, and this is like a very quick overview. What can we learn from this beautiful story? I could go on forever, but I wanted to focus on just 6 things that I want to share with you. The first is, don't be afraid to dream big. Don't be afraid to have a big, beautiful dream. something really inspiring. Don't dream small, dream big. Allah loves big things and hates petty things. Don't be afraid of thinking that you can change the world. And then at the same time, the same point is that be a safe place for your children to come to you with their big dreams. It's often not really pointed out that Yaqub alayhi salam had a relationship with Yusuf as his son, alayhim salam, where he could come to him with an unsettling dream and tell him that dream. That is not to be taken for granted. How many of us had that kind of a relationship with our own parents? Would we go to our parents and feel safe to tell them a dream we had? Or would we want to hide it and be afraid of their scorn or their criticism or their punishment or their ridicule even? Are we safe places for our children to come to us with their dreams? That's the first point. Dream big and be a safe place for big dreams to be given, to be told, to be expressed. The second thing is foster an identity in your children as believers, and they will act accordingly. Yaqub alayhi salam, when he heard this dream, the conversation between them is something worth reading over and over. He tells him who he is. This is who you are. These are this is your lineage. Now, most of us don't have prophets as forefathers, and that's okay because they are all of our spiritual forefathers. This is our legacy. This is our inheritance. Islam is our inheritance. We should own it and feel in our hearts, what is my identity? My identity is a follower of Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. The power of how we think of ourselves cannot be overstated. I'll give you one simple example. This is such a small thing, but hopefully it conveys the point. There was an actual study where they gave people a white coat and they said, this is the coat of a doctor. And they gave them a science exam. And they scored a certain score on this science exam. Then later gave them the identical white coat and said, this is the coat of a janitor. They scored worse on the same science exam. Just how you think you are, like even just your clothing, forming this sense of who am I? What's my identity? We act according to how we think of ourselves. If I am a believer, if I am a follower of Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, that dictates a certain kind of showing up in the world. It dictates a certain kind of behavior. We act according to our identity. So what does this mean in practicality? If your child misbehaves, let's say they told a lie, how do we respond to that? Do we say, you're a liar? Or do we say, you are a truthful person and you're acting outside of your norm? Which is going to make them, which has a better chance of helping them tell the truth next time? When we tell our children, when we attribute a bad behavior to their identity, we make them think of themselves in those terms. When we remind them of who they really are and how inconsistent it is, their behavior is inconsistent with who they really are, they will have a cognitive dissonance. Wait, that's not the kind of person I am. I can't do this. Identity is one of the most powerful motivators for behavior. That's why we just underwent a really nice election season. Everything's about identity politics. Why do you think that is? Because People vote according to what someone like me would do. How you think of yourselves, your identity dictates your behavior. Be careful the kind of identity you help your child and yourself form. Yaqub alayhi salam helped Yusuf form an identity so that when he was away from him, he knew who he was. And when he introduced himself to his cellmates in prison, he told them, this is who I am. This is who I am. The third is, I'll call building an ummah, not a usbah. What do I mean by that? Yusuf's brothers were so indignant and upset that they felt that their father favored their little brother, and they said, we should be the ones who he loves and favors because we are a usbah. A usbah, what means what? It essentially means like a gang, a group of people who support each other, right or wrong. It comes from the same root as asabiyya. Asabiyya means like tribalism, where you support your tribe, right or wrong. Usbah means we are connected and united against the enemy, no matter right or wrong. We're not working together based on a common shared righteous principle. We're working together based on a common shared sort of identity or sense of group, membership. This kind of attitude of usbah is actually the heart of genocide. It's how genocide happens. It's in-group, out-group. They're not us. And we're going to get rid of them to preserve us, right or wrong. What is an ummah? It's the opposite of that. An ummah is a unity around a shared set of principles. It's that rope of Allah that we're all holding on to. If we let go of the rope of Allah, we're no longer united. We cannot just hold each other's hands. We have to be holding a common rope of Allah. We have to be united around common principles of justice and compassion, and not fall into tribalism of any kind, or internal cliques, or I'm better than you because of, I'm from such and such country and you're not, or I have this kind of a degree and you don't, or I have this much money and you don't. That is falling into usbah versus ummah. So what's another incredibly important lesson from Surah Yusuf is the importance of how to unite, on what things we should be uniting, and that it has to be the common principles of Islam, the rope of Allah, the teachings of the Quran, and not any other of these kinds of identities. Now, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't celebrate your heritage, your culture. All those things are beautiful. It just shouldn't be a way to otherize other people, push them out, and have an in-group. The fourth thing, and this is so important, especially in the current climate, is we never allow others' value of us define us. What do I mean by that? In Surat Yusuf, when he was thrown into the well and he was taken by a caravan, it says in the surah that they sold him for a pittance, for hardly any money, and they thought it was even too much for him. They put so little value on this prophet of God, the most amazing, beautiful, honored person, and they put so little value on him. So when society devalues us, our personhood, our way of thinking, our way of dressing, our way of speaking, our approaches to things, when we are devalued, we can never allow that to make us feel that we are less than. We can never internalize the rampant Islamophobia that we see around us. Our value comes from Allah, not the assessment of society. And I say this especially to the young people in this room. It is so hard being young in the age of social media. SubhanAllah, I'm glad I grew up without it. And it was already hard for me. But your value is not based on your likes or how many people follow you on Instagram or TikTok. Your value as a human being comes from Allah. You are endowed with nobility and value from Allah. Don't allow other people's opinion of you to define you. The fifth, and this is a kind of dovetails from the fourth, is our tormentors are not our teachers. What do I mean? Yusuf alayhi salam was in prison for a crime he did not commit. Unjustly. He asked this prison cellmate to help him by telling the king about him. The guy completely forgot. Then years and years later came back to ask for help. Now, understandably and justifiably, he could have said, I'm not helping you. I'm not helping these people who just oppressed me, ruined my whole life, put me in prison unfairly, lied about me, slandered me. Why should I help you? But he didn't do that. He knew that he had the knowledge to help an entire region, the entire Middle East, from a famine. And he wasn't going to withhold that information because of how he was treated. He put his principles above his own sense of hurt because his tormentors were not his teachers. His teacher was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. His principles were based on how would Allah want me to behave, not how do these people treat me. This idea of treat people as you would want them to treat you. We have a much higher standard than that. Treat people as you would want Allah to treat you. You want Allah to be compassionate with others. You want Allah to forgive you, forgive others. If we act like we only have an audience of one, which is Allah, we are free. This is a free man, even though he was in prison. Our tormentors do not teach us how we should be. Our principles and our behavior are according to our ethics, not theirs. And then finally, and I'll end with number 6, even in our darkest hour, we have to remember that Allah is with us. So Yusuf alayhi salam was at the bottom of the well. It's a symbol of hitting rock bottom, literally. Being in a very difficult place, having just been betrayed by his brothers. Imagine being wrestled by 11 older brothers and thrown in a well. And it was in this moment, at this point, that Allah told him that he would confront them and tell them about this issue. Allah was always with him, even at the darkest moment. And then when he was sent to prison. And he asked his cellmate to remember him with his Lord, remember him with the man that he worked for. And the guy completely forgot. And he languished in prison for many more years. Why this delay? Isn't he a prophet of God? Why this delay? Why this setback? It feels so hard when our lives feel like setback after setback, delay after delay. We make dua and it doesn't seem to be answered. But look at the story of Yusuf, subhanallah. When it was finally time for him to come out, when his help was needed. So let's play it out in a different scenario. Had this man remembered, left prison, which was pretty soon after, it was just a couple of years by most, estimations, went out and said, oh, there's this wonderful dream interpreter. Maybe you can take him out and he can work for you. Yusuf alayhi salam would have left prison as a dream interpreter. The women of the city and the minister's wife, in most likelihood, would not have been ready to confess. And I say this why? Because it takes time for people of that kind of stature to have their conscience ready to confess, because it's such a high cost to their reputation, to their pride. And in general, this doesn't happen until years and years later. So you know the story of Emmett Till, a 12-year-old boy who was lynched because a woman, he's a black boy who was lynched by a mob of people on the false accusation of a white woman. And he was killed, and brutally so, tortured and killed, basically. She confessed right before she died, decades later. She was not ready to confess until decades later. And this is actually a pattern. This is not unusual. When people make false accusations, it takes them a long time to be ready to confess. So that delay was giving time to those women to be ready to confess. And what did their confession mean? It meant that Yusuf alayhi salam didn't leave prison as a mere dream interpreter with a scandal over his head. He left prison to be in a place of authority with his dignity, to be in authority over the storehouses of all of Egypt. And it was only in that position that his family would come back and pay him respect, and his dream would come true. They would not do that to a dream interpreter. And so what does this mean, my sisters and brothers? It means that sometimes delays make dreams come true. Always trust in Allah's plan for you. Always trust in His timeline. So I'll end by saying, let us all practice sabrun jameel, beautiful patience, beautiful perseverance, a concept that is in this beautiful surah, which means express your grief when you have it. Talk about it to Allah. Don't suppress it, but at the same time, don't allow any setback to make you have anything but a positive opinion of Allah. Keep your hope alive and keep your resilience strong. Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this conversation. And if you did, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.
Share this episode with others who may be interested in the meaning of the Quran. Also, we love to hear from our listeners. Tell us your reflections at Quran Conversations, our Instagram page. We love and we read every single one. Finally, we hope this podcast encourages your own reflective journey with the Quran. This week's reflection prompt is: have you ever experienced a year of sadness or a time when you grieved loss? How can this surah bring you comfort? Until next time, keep reflecting on the Quran. Assalamu alaikum.